Hola, clase. Today we're going to look at AR verbs in the present tense. Your new vocabulary list has 10 verbs that end in AR. So I want to make sure that you're able to use those verbs in a sentence. And in order to do that, we need to know how to conjugate these AR verbs. So all 10 AR verbs on your list are regular verbs. So I'm going to show you how to conjugate regular AR verbs in the present tense. We're going to start by just looking at the verb hablar. So you can see that hablar is considered an AR verb because it ends in the letter AR. We've talked about the other kinds of verbs there are. There's ER verbs and there's IR verbs. So verbs that end in ER, like comer, they have their own category. Verbs that end in IR, like vivir, they have their own category. Verbs that end in AR, like hablar, that's what we're going to talk about today. They have their own category, and all regular AR verbs, like hablar, they all have the same endings in the present tense. So it's really easy to remember those endings. And then whenever you see a new AR verb, you'll already know how to use it in a sentence. So hablar means to talk, like when you're talking to friends. Yo hablo con mis amigos. I talk with my friends. When we want to use a verb like hablar in a sentence, we're going to need to conjugate it first. Conjugating a verb just means that we're going to change it to match the person who's the subject of our sentence. We do that in English all the time. We just don't think about it. So if we take the verb run, when we say I run, we just leave it alone. But when we say he runs, we need to add an S to it. If we want to change it into the past tense, we might say I ran. So conjugating a verb is something that we do all the time in English. In Spanish, we just do it a little bit differently. Here's the 3 steps that we take when we want to conjugate an AR verb in Spanish. So step 1, we remove the ending AR from the end. Step 2, we identify the subject of the sentence. And step 3, we add the ending that matches the subject. Here's the endings that you'll need to know in order to conjugate regular AR verbs. So if your subject is yo, which if you will remember is I, then we're going to put the ending O on the verb. If the subject is to, which means you, we're going to put AS on the end. If the subject is él, ella, or usted, which is he, she, or the formal version of you, we're going to put an A on the end. If your subject is nosotros, which is we, you're going to put amos on the end. And if your subjects are ellos, ellas, or ustedes, which is they masculine, they feminine, or you all, like plural, you, then you're going to put an AN on the end. So your endings are o, as, a, amos, an. All right, so here you can see that we've put the correct endings on the verb hablar. So we just do the 3 steps. We first take off the AR off of the verb. So we end up just with the 4 letters HABL. So once we've removed the AR, then we can go and we can look at our subject. We can put the correct ending on the verb so that it matches the subject. So the subject yo needs the ending O. So we have yo hablo. For the subject to, we need the ending AS. So we end up with tú hablas. For él, ella, usted, we want to put that A on the end. So we end up with habla. Nosotros gets amos. So nosotros hablamos. And ellos, ellas, ustedes, it gets an A-N put on the ending. So after we take off the AR and add A-N, we end up with hablan. Okay, now we're going to look at some of those common AR verbs that are on your list. I think you'll find that these verbs, these AR verbs, are really helpful because they are a lot of actions that we might do on a regular basis. So they're things that we might want to be able to use in our sentences. We have sacar fotos, so to take photos. Maybe you like to take photos on your phone. Andar en bicicleta, to ride a bike. Lavar el carro, to wash the car. Tomar una siesta, to take a nap. Almorzar, to eat lunch. Cocinar, to cook. Maybe some of you like to cook or to help your parents cook. Cocinar. Explorar el internet. Mirar la televisión, to watch TV. Estudiar, to study. Or enviar, to send. So you might send a letter or send a package or something, send a text message. You would use enviar. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice using one of these AR verbs in a sentence. So you can see that I have a blank here. We're going to put the verb in parentheses, the green verb there, sacar. We're going to put that in the blank, but before we put it in the blank, we want to conjugate it. So the sentence is, yo blank fotos con mi celular. So I take photos with my cell phone. We're going to take this verb, sacar, and we're going to take the AR off the end because we know that that's our first step, is to take the AR off the end. And then we're going to go back and we're going to look at our subject, which is yo. We're going to remember that whenever we have the subject is yo, we need the ending O on the end. So we're going to put an O on the end of our verb. We end up with sacó. So then in our blank, we can put sacó. Now our verb matches our subject. Yo saco fotos con mi celular. I take pictures with my cell phone. Okay, let's try another sentence. Tu blank en tu bicicleta azul. So you ride in your blue or on your blue bike. And our verb is andar there, which means to ride. We're going to take off the ending. So we're going to take off the AR. That just gives us AND. We're going to look back at our subject. So our subject is to, right? And we know that whenever we have a subject as to, we need AS as our ending. So we're going to put an AS on the end. Gives us andas. Andas. Tú andas en tu bicicleta azul. So you ride on your blue bicycle. All right, the next sentence. Mi madre blank el almuerzo. We're going to put the verb cocinar in the blank. So once we're finished, this sentence will say, my mother cooks lunch. We're going to take cocinar. We're going to do our first step, which is to take off the AR. We're going to look and see who our subject is. So be careful here because mi is not our subject. Mi is just an adjective describing madre. So madre is our subject. So madre is like saying she, right? It's a lady and it's singular. So it's like having our subject as ella. And if we remember correctly, whenever we have el, ella, or usted as our subject, then we need to put an A on the end of our verb. So we're going to end up with this. And then since we've taken our AR off, we add an A onto the end. So cocina. Mi madre cocina el almuerzo. My mother cooks lunch. Okay, how about this one? Nosotros blank en la escuela. We're going to put the verb estudiar in the blank, which is to study. So we study in this school is what we want to say. We know that we want to get rid of the AR. So we can go ahead and put the first part of that verb in our blank. We don't want to forget the I. And then we're going to look at our subject. Our subject is nosotros. And we're going to remember that whenever our subject is nosotros, we want to put amos on the end. So we're going to go ahead and put amos on the end. We end up with nosotros estudiamos en la escuela. We study in the school. Okay, here's our last one. So ellos blank el carro para su padre. And the verb is lavar. So they wash the car for their dad. I bet your dad would like that if you washed the car for him. So we are going to take the verb lavar. We're going to take off the ending. So we end up with just LAV once we take the AR off. We're going to look at our subject. So be careful here because padre is not our subject, right? We want to look back at the beginning of the sentence. And our subject is ellos. So it's they. Ellos, ellas, ustedes. They all get the same ending. They all get the ending AN, right? So we're going to put an AN on the end. And we have ellos lavan el carro para su padre. They wash the car for their father. And if we conjugated our verb for some reason, we conjugated it in another way, like maybe say we put an O on the end, then when somebody read this sentence, they would be confused because lavo has an O on the end. So that means our subject should be yo. So it's going to confuse somebody if you don't use the correct ending. You want to make sure you use the correct ending AN so that it matches EOS.